IIT Delhi Director. Dr. Rao has over 480 research publications related to nanoscale devices and nanoelectronics, and is an inventor on 49 patents and patent applications, which include 18 issued US patents. Professor Rao is co-founder of two deep technology startups at IIT Bombay. One is nano-scale and other one is the soil sense. Professor Rao's research and leadership contributions have been recognized with over 30 awards and honors in the country and abroad. He is a recipient of 3 honorary doctorates. Dr. Rao has served as the chairman IEEE AP and ED Bombay Chapter, and as a vice chairman of IEEE Asia Pacific Regions Chapters Subcommittee and a proud fellow of IEEE. So recently, Professor Rao has been appointed as a council chairman of Jawaharlal Nehru Academy, the Center for Academic Science Research, which is at Bangalore. So he won several accolades such as Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize in Engineering Sciences. I think recently he won the prize in 2013. Sorry. Yeah, so IEEE EDS Education Award, Excellence in Research Awards from IIT Bombay, DAE and DRDO, Swarna Jayanti Fellowship Award from the Department of Science and Technology, IBM Faculty Award, Best Research Award from the Intel Asia Academic Forum, Techno-Visionary Award from the Indian Semiconductor Association, J.C. Bose National Fellowship, and these are few to name. Professor Rao was an editor for the IEEE Transaction on Electron Device in 2003 to 2012 for the CMOS devices and technology area, and currently serves as the editorial advisory board of ACS Nanoletters, leading international journal area of nanotechnology. Dr. Rao served as the chairman IEEE AP ED Bombay Chapter and as a vice chairman IEEE Asia Pacific Regions Chapters Subcommittee for 2 terms. He was the first elected chairman for the Indian section American Nano Society during 2013-15. So these are few of his accomplishments, but there are many things to say. But I think I'll stop here. And sir, we are really honored and proud to have you in our campus. And on behalf of JSS SMTU and behalf of JSS Mahavidyapita and on behalf of IEEE-SJCE and on my behalf, so we are truly happy to have you. So thank you and welcome for this talk.
IEEE-SJCE has always upheld the motto, learn, tech and excel. And we believe in the quote, once a new technology rolls over, if you're not part of the roller, you're part of the road. Our annual magazine is one such way that gives us a glimpse of the contemporary technology by our young writers. The magazine is the reflection of our organization and an honest effort of the editorial board. We are honored to release our magazine at such an event. Now, it's time to unveil the most awaited magazine of this academic year. I request all the dignitaries on the dais to release Interface 2022. I request all the editorial board members to come over the stage for a photo. Thank you everyone. I now request Sudarshan Patil Kulkarni, Chair-elect Mysore subsection, to share a few words.
very good morning to one and all. So again, I am here on behalf of the IEEE Mysore subsection as a chair-elect. First and foremost, I welcome our eminent guest, Dr. V. Ramgopal Rao, for this occasion. Okay. It's indeed honor and a pleasure for us to witness his talk. Okay. So I know about him since quite a long time. I follow him, whatever he says in the media regarding the policies about technical education, any new initiatives in IIT Delhi. So I constantly follow him, what he's doing and what he's saying, and whatever he says and does has impact at the national level. Okay. So policymakers listen to what he says about technical education. So it's indeed an honor for such a personality to be among us. So with this brief introduction, I just say a few words about IEEE Mysore subsection. IEEE Mysore subsection was established in the year 2020. It's one among the three subsections of the IEEE Bangalore. So that covers, so three subsections are IEEE Mysore subsection, IEEE Mangalore subsection, and IEEE North Karnataka subsection. Okay. So under Mysore subsection, we cover Mysore district, Mandya district, Hassan district, Chamarajanagar district, and Kodagu district. So under IEEE Mysore subsection, there are 15 institutions, and that is 15 student branches are actively working, and that covers like almost 1,000 IEEE members, including both the senior members, faculty members, and student members. So we are a very active subsection to promote electronics related and humanitarian activities. Every year we conduct one flagship conference that is called IEEE Mysore Con, and I am very pleased to say that this year's IEEE Mysore Con will be organized here in the JSS Science Technology University campus on October 16th and 17th. So I request all the researchers and electronics students to contribute and participate in this conference. Besides that, we also do many activities like student project competitions and outreach programs and etc. So with this brief introduction for IEEE Mysore subsection, I again welcome our honorable guest as well as all the faculties and students to this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Finally, it's the moment that we all look forward to. I now request Dr. Ramgopal Rao, today's speaker, to address the gathering.
So the point here is, we are all doing research. The research generally is seen as, you go to library, read lots of papers, and then you find some of these papers, find some gaps in these papers, that something is done here, something is done there, but something is not done, and then you go to your faculty advisor, and then you say that I want to work in this area. And then depending on the facilities available, the simulation tools available, you carry out that work, you write some more papers, right? So that's how the knowledge gets advanced, and every PhD student writing 4 or 5 papers. Yesterday I was in JNC, and the average number of papers a PhD student writes from JNCASR. JNCASR is one of our very top academic institutions. Is about 6 papers kind of thing. I think they write every PhD student writes about 5 to 6 papers. So which is good. I think that there is a lot of knowledge that is getting generated, but now what is important is knowledge to wealth translation. So one thing that we have all become very good at doing is we get these grants from various sources. It could be government or industry or whatever it is, and from those funds we generate knowledge. Now from knowledge we need to at some point convert that knowledge back into wealth. I think that is the process that is what is needed in the country. Now, for example, if you look at India, the higher educational institutions, there are over 1,000 universities now. Of course, JSS is also one among them. And at the time of independence, we had about 15 universities. From 15 to 1,000 universities, we have come a long way in the past 75 years. But this is also an important statistic, the gender-wise enrollment. I am very happy to see so many girls here. Even at the national level, in higher educational institutions, it's 50-50. 50% are girls. So which is a good sign. I mean, India is prospering because I think we have so many women now in our higher educational institutions. So it's a good thing. And if you look at the student enrollment, I think the PhD, which is what who are the people who really do research and write papers from the country, it's growing at 10%. There are about 200,000 PhD students in our higher educational institutions. So 200,000 people today are pursuing their PhD in the country, and which is growing at almost like 10% per year kind of thing, which is again a good sign. So if you look at the current status of India's R&D, India is a leading country in doing research. We are actually ranked third in the world. If this is as per the National Science Foundation USA data, India is ranked third. Which are the two other countries ahead of us? It's easy to predict. The one is China, right? China is always number one now in everything. And then comes US. China has overtaken US in the last few years. And then comes India. Now if you look at the total number of papers published in good journals, China has about 20% share. That means every fifth paper written anywhere in any journal comes out of China. So that is the kind of the world power when it comes to knowledge power they have when it comes to the publishing papers and all that. And then comes US, which is at 16%. Then comes India, which is way behind, but we are still better than Germany, Japan, Korea, and all of those countries. So I think the credit must go to researchers all over the country. I think we are indeed doing very well when it comes to doing research. Of course, we need to catch up with both China and US, and even this is number of publications. Now, what about the quality of publications? When you look at the quality of publications, we are among the top 10. We are not at top 3, but we are at 9th or 10th kind of a position. And so I think we still have some way to go when it comes to quality of research, and we can even improve the number of publications that we write from the country. But India is also one of the fastest growing countries when it comes to research, growing at almost like 11% as compared to the world average of 4%. So at this rate, if we continue to grow, I think at one point, we might even overtake the US. So that might happen. In fact, some people say that if Trump had continued for one more term, India would have overtaken US, but that did not happen. So let's see how things go in the future. But Trump might come back, so we have some hopes here. But if you look at India is still not spending enough money. In fact, you talk to your faculty members, talk to anybody, everybody is struggling for funds. There is hardly any money in the system. I mean, India somehow, for whatever reason it is not spending enough money. As a percentage of GDP terms, we spend about 0.6 to 0.7% of GDP on higher education. So 0.6 to 0.7% of GDP in higher education, but if you look at US, China, Korea spends almost up to 4% of their GDP on higher education. So US spends about 2%. China, US, all of them, like I said, all the knowledge economies, the developed countries, spend anywhere from 2 to 4%, while we are spending just 0.6%, I think, which is a bad thing. I mean, I hope government realize that investing in higher education, investing in research is investments into the future, because all new technologies get developed in academic institutions. So if we cut down that pipeline by stifling them for funds, I don't think anything great will happen out of these institutions. So I hope the governments will realize that one day or the other and start allocating more funds to academic institutions. But whatever money, the point here is, despite the low spending, we are still writing research papers. That knowledge is available in various other inventions and all of that. And all of that knowledge goes in order to develop that Pentium processor. So therefore, all the knowledge that we are developing in our academic institutions is all going towards development of these technologies. But unfortunately, we are not the ones who are compiling all of that into that final knowledge, into that final system or the final product. But whatever we are all doing, is all getting into those processors, getting into those systems that we are buying. But what is important right now is for the country to do is, now we should not be just supplying this knowledge to all these people. We should also be developing products of our own. So that is where India needs to take a lead. I mean, we cannot be just keep on doing knowledge and somebody uses all of that knowledge and sells us back those systems and then we buy them at a premium. I think that should not be the case. At some point, we cannot be the outsourcers of knowledge. We should also be integrating all of that knowledge available all over the world, not only in India, and develop products, and then let our people and the entire world use these products. So that has to be the kind of a culture that needs to come in the country, and that at some point needs to happen. So therefore, translation of knowledge into wealth is where we need to focus on. The next generation, all of you, who are all in your 20s and 30s, I think you are the ones who need to be those torchbearers. And so therefore, I think in order for that to happen, I always say that the societal problems need to become projects in our higher educational institutions. When you go out, you see so many problems, right? I mean, everything that you see outside is a problem. In fact, I say that all the world's problems are in India. If you are looking for a problem, you don't have to go and open an American journal to look for a problem. You just look around you, you find a problem. In some part of the country, you will find some problem which is there in the world somewhere. So therefore, I think with so many problems in the society that we experience day to day, I think we need to pick up those problems, find solutions, and then you can start your own company, or you can try to provide a solution to some government agency or industry or whatever may it is. I think that is how the academic institutions now need to function. So therefore, the societal problems need to become projects in our higher educational institutions. Now, if you look at the higher educational institutions, if you look at any higher educational institution, there are three aspects. The one aspect is education. Of course, this is where dissemination of knowledge, right? When you are teaching something, where does all that textbook knowledge come from? Somebody has worked on it, somebody has done research, and all of that research has first gone into papers. From papers it became into textbooks, and from textbooks you eventually, right? I am now breathing something with a particle count of 200 and 300, but I am a great researcher. I have done a lot of research on the London air quality. I think there is so that is the difference between knowledge and innovation. If I apply all of that knowledge that I have now done or generated by studying the air quality in London, apply some of those techniques, some of that science to solving the Delhi air quality problem, then I am doing innovation. Therefore, the innovation is now becoming very important, where you are applying your knowledge to solve a problem, and that is where India is not doing very well. While India is doing great in terms of education, even places like SJCE or IITs, we take pride in the quality of graduates who we produce. But when it comes to innovation, if somebody asks me what is that IIT Delhi has done that has solved this problem in the country, I need to scratch my head to answer that question. That is only because innovation has not been a driver of any educational institute in this country, whereas knowledge has been the driver and education has been the driver. So now time has come for all of us to start looking at how do we make our educational institutions innovators. And then the second aspect is delivery, right? So now I have developed a solution. I know that there is a problem in the society. I have conducted research. I have developed a solution. But then if that solution lies as some aluminum box in my office, that is nothing. Nothing will change, right? Now eventually that aluminum box that we have developed, which you believe can solve a problem, needs to be deployed in the field, and some people who need to use that must be using it. So when that happens, when you deliver your knowledge, when you deliver your innovation to the society, when people start using that and benefit from that, that is when that you can do through a startup, through an industry collaboration, through whatever means, even an NGO, right? It need not always be to make money. So therefore, in any of those ways, if you can take your innovation to the people, and if people are using that, therefore the delivery part becomes as important as the relevance of your research. So that is where, for example, you now look at relevance and delivery as two important aspects. That is how your knowledge can become innovation. So that is something that we need to be doing. I'll skip that because I think it's not so important. Or just let's spend 1 minute on this. So for example, one of the biggest problems even at IIT Delhi when I took up the position was most of the research that we do originates in library, right? How do we pick up our research problems? Basically, when a PhD student joins, what is the first thing that we do? We tell the student to do literature survey. You read any PhD thesis, the entire chapter is dedicated to literature survey, right? And then you read all these papers, right? And then you find a problem, and then you do research and you publish more papers. Therefore, 70 to 100% of problems in the country, depending on which institute you go to, they originate in the library and they also end up in library. So that is how most of the research currently is done. Instead of doing that, let us say you start picking up problems from the society, right? So at IIT Delhi, we started a program called GRIP, the Grassroots Innovation Program. What we said was, students at IIT Delhi come from all over the country, from any small place, everywhere in the state, they come to IIT Delhi for their education. Now we are telling them, you pick up a problem which has relevance to your native place. Wherever you come from, you pick up a problem from that region and then use the resources available at IIT Delhi, including the funding that we provide. So you develop a solution to that problem and deploy that solution back in your village or the area that you come from. Now when that starts happening, then IIT Delhi would have found solutions to problems all over the country, right? And all these students, when a child gets admission into IIT Delhi, depending on the place they come from, you see those billboards and you see them becoming heroes and in those kind of towns and villages. But they are all celebrating just the fact that the student has gone to a good place in the country. But the student hasn't really done anything back, does not give anything back to that place. But instead, if the student picks up a problem of the local area and uses the ecosystem available in our institutions to develop a solution, then slowly the IIT will also get connected with those regions, and people should be able to say that my student has gone to SJCE but also solved this problem in my place. I think that is how our institutions need to be known. So we started a program called GRIP, for allowing students to take up problems of their local regions and then find solutions. So some of these are the things that we did, and even finding problems from industry, finding problems from strategic agencies. So this is one thing which we did, where we connected with all these strategic agencies and started to help them in a variety of ways. So these are the ways you can bring relevance to your research, and then you now finally do a startup or something and then develop the solution to that problem. There are as students who are all now beginning to choose your careers, I call them the 5 T's, the 5 technology platforms. In your lives, right, you will find that these technologies are going to be there in the day-to-day kind of a use. One is IT. IT, of course, we are the world players. We are using IT for everything. And if you want to know how well India is doing in IT, I picked up these 2019 figures. Indian IT exports in 2019 were 137 billion US dollars. That much of IT exports we did. And Saudi Arabia crude oil exports in 2019 were exactly the same, 133 billion US dollars. So that should give you a sense of how big the IT industry in India is. So we export as much as Saudi Arabia exports its crude oil kind of thing. So, and ours is a brain power. The more we use, the more it will grow. And in Saudi Arabia, the more they use, the less it will remain. So therefore, I think we have a great future. So I think that is something that we should all be proud of. And even the biotechnology, India is again doing very well in biotechnology. 50% of the global vaccines, 40% of generic drugs in the US, the drugs that are sold over the counter, every drug sold over the counter in the US is actually manufactured in India. So India is also a global player when it comes to biotechnology. We are again doing very well there. The third one is the nanotechnology. So even in nanotechnology, we are ranked third in the world for knowledge generation. So we are now generating a lot of knowledge in the area of nanotechnology, but this is where we need to do translation. We need to convert that knowledge into wealth. The fourth is the cognitive technology. India is ranked fifth in the world for cognitive technologies, the AI, ML kind of technologies, and quantum technology. We have a strong tradition of basic research, and we are also doing future is all quantum, whether you talk about communications or computers or anything that you name, sensors, everybody is talking of quantum technologies now. So therefore, these are the platform technologies. IT, BT are there inherently in everything that we do, and the same will happen with nanotechnology. Nanotechnology will be there everywhere that you will in any product that you use, and same will be the cognitive technologies and the quantum technology. These are the 5 technology platforms. Therefore, India has a major chance to become a world power and use these technologies for the societal benefit. So that is where a lot of great things can actually happen. And so one thing which is also not happening enough in the country is, if you look at research, how do you measure research? How do you say that somebody is a good researcher? You look at their papers, the publications, and you also look at their citations. How many of their papers have been cited by others? That is one metric for good research. But what is the measure of innovation? How do you measure innovation? Innovation is measured in terms of patents. How much of intellectual property have you generated? So India is not filing enough patents. We are not protecting our IP enough. That is the reason why we generate the knowledge and somebody uses that knowledge and sells us back the system. Therefore, India needs to now protect our IP as much more than what we do. Now, for example, I picked up this data, I just compiled this. In 2019 again, before the pandemic hit us, in nanotechnology, where we are ranked third in the world, the global rank in publications, look at how many patents we filed. We filed just about 54 patents. Look at the US. US, for example, has written a few more papers than us, but look at the number of patents they have filed, 4,666 patents. So what happens in a knowledge economy like the US is, they of course do a lot of research, but they also protect their IP. The moment you protect the IP, if somebody wants to use it, then you have to go to that person, pay royalty to license that IP, and that is how the universities earn money. That is how the US system basically runs right now on the knowledge that they generate. So in India, that is still not happening. We are producing research knowledge and we are just letting the world to use it, but we are not protecting it enough in our country. For example, in India, for every 300 research publications, we are filing one patent. In the US, if you look at, for every 5 publications, they are filing a patent. So that is a kind of a difference between US and India. China, is also like us. China also publishes lots of papers, and they US because the great research happens there, but they also protect their IP, and then they license those technologies, and their industries therefore become for example, the market capitalization of Apple is what is more than the GDP of many countries. I think their market capitalization is now over $2 trillion US, right? India's GDP is also somewhere in the same range. So that is a kind of a companies that they can build because they own the IP of the knowledge that they generate. So India needs to do that more. I think places like SJCE, I don't know how many patents you are all filing, but you all must file more and more patents, which is very important, for doing innovation. So now, having said this, I have another 20 minutes or so. So I will just tell about nanotechnology. I am basically work in the area of nanotechnology. So what is nanotechnology? Nanotechnology, just one slide, and this is the only equation I use, because if I put more equations, I have always seen people dozing off. So I think I will not show any more equations here. So what is, but this is a 10 standard equation. You cannot complain that this is an equation or anything. So what I am treating is, I am taking these particles of any element in the periodic table. Let's say copper, right? You take the case of copper, right? And I now keep on reducing the particle size of copper, right? When I keep on reducing the particle size of copper, I treat this particle as a sphere. right? And then I calculate the surface area of this particle, which is treated as a sphere. Let's say 4 pi r square is a surface area. What is the volume? 4 by 3 pi r cube. Therefore, what is the surface to volume ratio of the copper particle? That is, it goes as, if I keep on reducing the size of this copper particle, the surface area, as you can see, is increasing, the volume is decreasing. Therefore, the surface to volume ratio increases. So as you decrease the size of these particles, the surface to volume ratio goes as 1 over r. So that is the fundamental thing that drives nanotechnology. So you have more surface area, you have less volume, for these nanoparticles. Now the copper particles, I can synthesize them in the size of a 10 micrometer copper particle or 10 nanometer copper particle, right? I can now adjust the size of these particles anywhere from 10 nanometers to 10 micrometers, let us say. What happens is, the most interesting thing that happens is, a 10 nanometer size copper particle does not behave the same way as a 10 micrometer copper particle, right? At 10 nanometers, basically because its surface area is very different, its volume surface to volume ratio is very different. At those length scales, lot of quantum mechanical effects come in. And because a lot of quantum mechanical effects come in, the classical physics doesn't work on those 10 nanometer kind of particles, and then these materials start to behave in a very different way. So basically what happens is, you have all these elements in the periodic table, and these elements, whatever properties you study for these elements in your textbook, these are all the bulk properties. When you see that copper is conducting, copper has this property, these are all the bulk properties of copper, which are all measured on those 10 micron, 20 micron kind of particle sizes. What you don't see in the textbooks is, what are the properties of this 10 nanometer copper particle at the powder solution, or the powder that you synthesize, where the particle sizes are 10 nanometers. There the properties undergo a complete transformation. And therefore now you can see that as an engineer, when you look at it, I have all these periodic, all these elements in the periodic table. Now they are exhibiting new properties, right, at the nano scale. Now as an engineer, can I make use of some of these particle properties, some of these new properties these materials have, develop new applications? So therefore now as an engineer, I have a library of materials, library of these properties, and I can think of new applications, which otherwise were not possible. So that is what the nanotechnology is. In many cases, the materials undergo thermal changes in thermal properties, mechanical, optical, electrical, magnetic. Just to give you one example, I think I am an electrical engineer. I am sure many of you are also electrical engineers or IEEE. So now if you take silicon dioxide, right? Silicon dioxide we know is a perfect insulator. Now you make, let us say, a 1 micrometer thick silicon dioxide, 1 micron thick silicon dioxide, you apply 100 volts of that, no current will flow. 100 volts applied across 1 micrometer thick silicon dioxide, you cannot even measure the current. Any sensitive kind of a ammeter in your laboratory. You need very expensive equipment to actually measure the current across the silicon dioxide, 100 volts applied across 1 micrometer. Now you take the same silicon dioxide, now the thickness is only 1 nanometer. Now you apply even 1 volt across 1 nanometer, you will see a huge amount of current. Therefore, silicon dioxide becomes conducting at 1 nanometer length scale, it is insulating at 1 micrometer length scale. That is nanotechnology. Why does silicon dioxide conduct at 1 nanometer length scale? Why does it become a good conductor at 1 nanometer length scale? Because there is a quantum mechanical tunneling, a band-to-band tunneling kind of a phenomena occurs, which is all new physics now, and therefore it conducts. And that is where now the question here is, can I make use of these conducting properties of silicon dioxide for a particular application? As an engineer, I am not so much interested about all the things that have happened before. I know that now I have a silicon dioxide which conducts. Now can I think of an application where I can use this conducting silicon dioxide for addressing a problem which can have huge implications? In fact, there are applications. You can use it as a barrier layer, for a variety of tunneling devices and all that. So lot of good research is happening on that. So that is nanotechnology. So the changes in the material properties at the nanoscale is what you want to make use of to build new applications, new kind of systems and all that. Nanotechnology therefore has become very popular, and now nanomaterials are used as things for textiles, automobiles, machine tools and all that. For example, you can buy in the market shirts with nano coatings. What do those nano coatings coatings for the shirts too, they make it stain resistant. Even if you spill coffee, no, coffee doesn't stick to the shirt at all. It is like a lotus leaf kind of an effect. You drop a liquid on the lotus leaf, nothing sticks to the lotus leaf. Lotus leaf always looks very clean, right? The same thing happens to your shirt as well. So even if you spill coffee, it will not stick to the thing. It will look like a water drop on a lotus leaf kind of a thing. And those shirts you can buy in the market at 700 rupees, 800 rupees kind of a cost point. And even automobiles, there are many automobiles in the market today which have nano paints. Why do you need nano paints for these? Because to make them scratch resistant. So you can have nano paints which have a higher mechanical strength. That way you cannot easily form a scratch onto the paint. So those sort of applications are there. The bulletproof vest. Today, if you actually, there is a major project at IIT Delhi on this, that bulletproof vest that the soldiers wear, weighs 10.5 kilograms. And if you actually recently see, there was a tender, I am told, a few months ago, and they are asking for a bulletproof vest, with almost like 11 kg kind of a weight. And 11 kilograms is the bulletproof you wear, and then you go to fight your enemy and all that. So you can see the kind of burden on the soldiers. Now by using these nano composites, can you reduce the weight of these bulletproof vests to, let's say, 2 kilograms or 3 kilograms kind of a thing. So that's where you can find applications. And the nanoelectronics, of course, you are all talking of using them in your computers and all that. But people are talking of molecular electronics, where can you now make your molecules to behave like a switch, and can I connect these multiple molecules together to make an AND gate, OR gate, NOT gate kind of a thing. So from molecules you build up. This is like a bottom up kind of an approach, where you start synthesizing these molecules. Each molecule can switch its states. Now you connect multiples of these molecules to demonstrate a complete gates and systems and all of that. Anybody who can show today how to build a circuit out of these molecules, I can tell you, you can get a Nobel Prize. There is a Nobel Prize waiting for the molecular electronics, because nobody knows how to collect these molecules to actually make a complete circuit or a system. And whereas the conventional CMOS has already received multiple Nobel Prizes, but the molecular electronics, there is a Nobel Prize waiting to be given, because nobody has addressed the problem of connections to these molecules. They are also tiny, 5 angstroms, 4 angstroms. How will you connect them, and how will you make multi circuits out of these molecules? So these are very interesting research problems that one can look at. Nanobiotechnology, here again, lot of interesting work is happening. For example, cancer treatment. Now for cancer treatment, what is the problem with cancer treatment? In advanced stages, when you start to treat the cancer, there are lots of side effects. The cancer drugs that are supposed to go and kill the cancerous cells, whether it is radiation or any other therapy that you give, in the process of killing the cancerous cells, they also destroy the normal cells. And so because they destroy the normal cells, beyond a certain point, you cannot treat cancer, because now you cannot distinguish cancer cells from the healthy cells, and therefore many people die, because of cancer. And now with the nanotechnology, with the nano-bio kind of approaches, what they are doing is, you can read up on the web, targeted drug delivery. In the targeted drug delivery, you attach drugs to these nanoparticles, and these nanoparticles can go and detect the cancerous cells. They basically give the drugs to only the cancerous cell without affecting the healthy cell. And that size dependence of these drugs, the delivery processes, is the targeted drug delivery. And a lot of people are already testing these drugs now. Some of them are FDA approved, some of them are already being tried on patients, and a lot of great things are happening there. Therefore, the nanotechnology has multiple applications. So you can see that whether it is materials or electronics or biotechnology, a lot of very interesting things are happening in this field. And now let me, the next minutes or so that I have, let me tell you what is the research that my group has been doing. In 2004-2005 kind of a time frame, I came back from the US in '98, right, and then I joined IIT Bombay as a faculty member. And for next 6 years, 7 years, I could work on whatever I started in the US, whatever research I was conducting in the US. I could carry all those samples, and then I could basically do the same research, publish papers, and everything was going very well for me. And in around 2004-2005 time frame, I started thinking that, if I wanted to do the same research that I was doing in the US, why did I even come back to India? I could have as well done that in the US and earned 10 times more money. So then once I started realizing that if I have come back to India, I should do something which is more relevant for the country, more relevant for the society. Then I started to consciously look for projects which are, which have relevance in the society category. Now, one of the things you all use is a mobile phone. This is how at least my thinking process was at that time. So we all use mobile phones, right? And what are these mobile phones? They are now, when you compare a mobile phone with a human, right? What is the difference between a mobile phone and a human in terms of gathering information, right? So mobile, we see things. Mobile phones also can see things. They have excellent cameras. We hear things. Mobile phones also can hear things. They have excellent microphones and all that. They have good touch sensitivity. Mobile phones don't use the touch sensitivity in a very advanced way. But if you look at robots, right, they have the haptic feedback. They are conducting surgeries using robots now. So therefore, the touch sensitivity in a mechanical system, in an electronic system, is as good as what a humans can do. So therefore, the touch, hearing, and sight, these have been very well captured in the mobile phone. What are the other senses that we have which the mobile phones don't have? We can taste things, right? Mobile phones cannot taste anything. And we can smell things. Mobile phones still cannot smell anything. And there is also one sensor which we don't often talk about. It's called proprioception. It's the sense of belonging, sense of location. That is like the GPS in the system. Of course, mobile phones also have an excellent GPS system. So out of these 6 senses, the 4 are already captured, right? And the only 2 things which are not captured are the smell and taste. Now imagine a mobile phone which can smell things, right? And imagine the applications of a mobile phone which can smell things, right? What do you think can be the applications of a mobile phone which will start smelling? Your phone now can smell, let us say, like what you do. What interesting applications can you think of? Any interesting application can you think of for students particularly? No?
Sorry, LPG leakage.
Pardon?
Gas leakage.
Gas leakages. So and then you can, Bharat can tell you whether this guy has taken bath in the last 1 week or not. It can do so many things, right? I mean, once it starts smelling, infinite possibilities. And even if you go to an airport today, right? Let's say there is, some unidentified suitcase there, right? What do the security guys immediately do? They get a dog, right? I mean, now in 21st century, right? If there is an unidentified baggage, you still need to rely on a dog, right? You don't have any man-made system with which you can find out, what that bag actually contains. So therefore, how does dog actually do that? It essentially smells. It knows sensitivity at least 1 million times better than the humans. And if they are trained to detect narcotics or bombs or these explosive materials, it can go and sniff what is inside the bag and alert the security guy. And that is what they can do. So therefore, if we have a mobile phone, which is, if it is your nose sensitivity, it can't do anything. It will only tell you what perfume this girl is wearing, or when did this guy take a bath and all that. But if it is, our nose doesn't have. But even in our nose, for example, the food quality, right? If you want to know whether the food is good or bad, what do? You smell it, right? From smell you can figure out whether the food is good or bad. Right? So though we use it effectively, but the way the dog's nose works can have tremendous applications for the mankind, right, or the humankind. For example, if you can develop an electronic, if you can develop that phone which is as sensitive as a dog's nose, and if that phone can sense explosives or narcotics and all that, you can now in a bus, if you are traveling, you immediately know what that bag contains, and you can alert people before something bad happens there. And even when the terrorists want to do any harm, they would do that at a place where there are people, right? And then where there are people, there will be mobile phones, and where there are mobile phones, then you can track what is happening there. And terrorists don't want to go and explode a bomb in Sahara Desert and claim something, right? They also, their purposes is also to harm people. So I think these are the kinds of technologies that one would like to have. So one of the first projects we thought of was, can we develop an electronic nose platform which is as good as a dog's nose? That was a project definition that we set for ourselves, and so we started a major activity on electron nose kind of platforms, and then even the taste. These are called electronic tongues, and they have very many applications. For example, food tasting or the tea tasting. These are all currently done by humans. Now, if you can have an electronic tongue kind of a platform, you can standardize all of these products, and that again is a multi-billion-dollar kind of application. So, electronic nose platforms, electronic tongue kind of platforms. As you can see, these are two things that we have not been able to, currently measure. And the moment you are able to measure, you can also transmit it. Now, imagine now when you are watching a kind of a movie, and if there are, if the something is happening in a garden, you can smell the garden there, right? Those kind of possibilities can also happen in the near future. Once you are able to measure something, that's the beginning of the vast kind of things that can actually happen. So that was one of the projects that we started looking at, and so one of the things it's a big market. These are all known as the IoT, the Internet of Things. People are talking that it can be a trillion sensor kind of a market, and there are multiple such problems. You don't have to just look at electronic nose as a platform. You can look at agriculture. There are so many technologies required in agriculture. The healthcare is a major concern. Security is a problem. Energy, water crisis, everything is a problem. So one can start developing solutions to many of these kind of things. So I will skip this. So so therefore my initial project way of looking at was, let us develop something for the society. Let us develop something which the society can make use of in India, and if it is done in India, then it can also have the world applications kind of thing. The first project we picked up was a cardiac diagnostic system. And what is a cardiac diagnostic system? Because in India, every fourth death occurs because of a cardiac failure. And 25% of Indians, in fact more than 25% of Indians die because of a heart attack today. And diagnosing heart failures, right, diagnosing any problem of heart is pretty expensive. Today, if I have chest pain, right, if you have chest pain, what do you do as the first thing? You think it's not because of heart, so it's because of any other kind of a reason. But if the chest pain persists for some more time, what do you do then? You go to you go to an MBBS doctor. But if it is something related to heart, and chest pain and some other symptoms, MBBS doctors don't want to take any chances. They immediately, ask you to refer you to a cardiologist or a cardiac kind of a hospital. And once you go to a cardiac hospital, they will do lots of tests on you, right? They do, of course, ECG they do, and then they do multiple tests. And then after a day or so, they might say that you don't have any problem, your heart is also normal. But then the bill they will give you after that 1 day of being in the intensive unit, you will have a heart attack. So that is the current situation. So to rule out that the chest pain is not because of a heart problem, is because of something else, can cost you anywhere upwards of ₹1 lakh and all of that. And so we said, can we develop a simple solution that if I have a chest pain, I do simple blood tests, right? And using these blood tests, I should be able to rule out the cardiac problems. And that was the project. And how much money should I be able to spend in doing those tests? Let's say about ₹100. And you can go to an MBBS doctor, get that simple blood test done, and say that, no, I don't have any heart problem, my ECG is normal, all these markers are also normal, therefore I don't have to go to a super specialty hospital and all of that. So we wanted to develop something as simple as that. So how do you detect these cardiac problems? You measure, you look for these proteins in the blood. These are all like troponin, myoglobin. That when the heart muscles start to die, that is when the heart attack can occur. So when these muscles start to die, they release certain markers into the blood. So if you can track those markers, you basically can predict the heart attacks. And even in the hospital, that's what they do. They basically measure the troponin concentrations and all of that at regular sort of intervals. So we wanted to develop it using a simple, tabletop kind of a system, which you can, like the sugar testing, right? A small electronics unit and then a cartridge. You put a drop of blood, and then it can give you the marker concentrations for some of these cardiac markers. So what does it require? It will require the sensors, the biosensor array. You take the blood, you filter the blood, and then you add these reagents. So this is the cartridge type, which is disposable. And then you have a small tabletop electronics, which can actually do the detection and all of that. So this is what we did. I will not, we developed a very simple cardiac nano-mechanical sensor platform, which can detect any binding that happens between the cardiac proteins and the receptors here. So they specifically bind on the surface of this cantilever. Any binding that happens here, we can detect it electrically because the binding causes a stress, the stress causes a strain, and because we have a piezoresistor integrated here, the strain now I can measure electrically as a resistance change. That is the whole platform here. So we started working on such a platform. We did a lot of innovation, wrote lots of papers, developed very sensitive electronics, developed even an electronic chip, an ASIC and all that, and we actually put together our very first system called iSense, the cardiac sensing kind of a device, and so this was the very first chip that can actually measure or predict the heart attacks. And then we started a company at that time called the Nano-scale Technologies. We transferred this technology to them. And then subsequently, while we were doing that, there was a bomb blast in Pune around some years ago, and then the security agencies came and said, can you develop an electronic sniffer platform, because these the sniffer dogs are there, but it's very difficult to maintain and train them. So can we have a simple electronic device which can replace a sniffer dog? So that is how we got into this explosive detection, and our target was to detect these TNT, RDX, PETN kind of materials, and then we use the same platform. Now we put the specific coatings here, the receptors here, which can bind to vapors of explosive. Like the nose, right? There are receptors. These vapors bind to those receptors. That is how our brain actually recognizes them. A similar process also happens here. So we started working on these cantilevers, coat them with receptors. The binding happens, and then through that you detect the binding events and all of that. So we developed that electronic nose platform, and then we made arrays of sensors, and with a lot of chemistry goes into that. And this was the first platform that we built, the XNIF we call it. And this has, it takes in the air, looks for the vapors of explosive. When the vapors of explosive are there, they bind to these cantilever surfaces. And when the binding happens, now we get an electronic signal, because any binding event, like I said, when the receptor which binds to these vapors selectively, the binding between the host and guest gives rise to a stress, then there is a strain developed because of stress, and then you have a piezoresistor which can actually detect the binding kind of an event. So this was the first platform we call the XNIF platform, and all these are papers. My web page will have the ENOS, multi-channel analog signal conditioning, and so we did work on this, and we also did a lot of pattern recognitions and trained this system. Because remember, this is also like an electronic dog. So our nose also can smell everything, but then we are trained as part of growing up what smell corresponds to what. First time when you smell something, somebody told you that this smell belongs to this, then your brain registered it, and then next time when you smell, you know that that smell corresponds to that. The same thing happens with the electronic nose. It can react to every smell, but then for every smell there is a specific pattern, and those patterns you already train the system and store them in the microcontroller. So every time that pattern appears, then you know that that pattern corresponds to this particular smell. So that is how you train the system. So we do all the trainings, and then we also recently developed a NEMS platform for doing the explosive detection. So using many of these approaches, it took us almost 10 years, and we recently launched this product. About a year ago, we came into the market this product called Nano Sniffer. You can actually search on Google for Nano Sniffer. It was launched by Government of India, the previous Union Minister for Education. It can actually detect explosives in 10 seconds now. And now Bombay Airport is buying them, and a lot of good things are happening because this is pretty inexpensive platform, and it is a handheld platform. And 10 seconds it can detect, and it can actually, now we hold the US patent on this, a granted US patent. We also hold the European patent on this. Now this is the world's first micro sensor based explosive trace detector, but it took us full 10 years to actually develop it. And before that, we tried and failed in multiple other approaches, but finally the approach that worked for us after a lot of learning from those failings, we were able to develop the system, and now it's all there in the market, and anyone can buy on the GEM, the government e-marketplace, and one can even buy from this company. And then one of the things we wanted to next do was, these sensors, we wanted to integrate them into a tiny sensor node, and then miniaturize that, and then put them in the buses and trains. For example, in an airport, you should have that explosive sensors network. When you enter the airport, if somebody of course you will never enter the airport with that, but if some terrorist is entering the airport with a bag full of these materials, and the moment the person enters, these are all like sniffer dogs, integrated sniffer dogs in the airport. Someone will pick it up as a smell which corresponds to the explosives, and then alert the security agency, and that is how you can track the person before the person even reaches the security point and all of that. So these are the kinds of systems, but we wanted to integrate them into the bus, into the train, into every other place. Now how do you do that? So for that we wanted to miniaturize it. The good thing about electronics is whatever looks large today, you can miniaturize it over a period of time. So that is a good part of electronics. And the dogs, they are all biological things. You cannot play with their sizes and all of that. But electronics can be made so tiny kind of thing. In fact, that reminds me when the first personal computer was introduced, the desktop computers, they called them mobile. Why were they called mobile? Because you can after all move it from one room to another room. So they were mobile computers. So now if you call a desktop a mobile computer, many people will laugh at you. But that was how the mobility has actually evolved. So now these are all systems you want to put it all over the place. But but in these systems, how do you power them? Now if I say that I want to put it in the bus, but then for that I need to open the bus body, connect all the wires to this sensor, and then seal them, because if you have wires all outside, a terrorist will come, cut the wire, place the bomb, and then 10 years of your research with one scissors could have taken care of. So that doesn't work. So you need to conceal the wiring. Concealed wiring, doing it for tens of we have started a major project for agriculture. For example, Government of India distributed these soil health cards, and the soil health card contains all of these micro and macronutrients to be measured. Now how would you measure them? Today the farmer has to send the soil sample to an agricultural lab, and in the agricultural lab they do all the tests and all of that, but it costs money, it takes time, and it's hardly functional. It's actually not really working. Now imagine having a simple handheld system, and you train a 10th class graduate in a village to use the system to measure the soil health parameters and then fill up this health card. Now that way you provide employment to a bunch of people in the villages who can cover a few villages with these systems, and with that process you keep monitoring the soil health. You advise the farmer what is the amount of fertilizer to use, what fertilizer to use in the first place, what nutrients to use, so that way you can control what goes into the soil. And so we started working on this project, and again our project was to develop these real systems and then deliver them to the society. So we started developing these 4 prototypes, one for macronutrients, volatile tracking, pathogen detection, the disease monitoring for the early stage and non-invasive detection of pathogens, the diseases that the crops get, and the moisture, pH and salinity. We started working on these as the prototypes, and we did quite a bit of work, and now after about 3.5 to 4 years, now we have this system. So we have the soil sense stations, and we started a company about 2.5 years ago called Soil Sense, and Soil Sense now has almost like 150 installations. They have their products installed. A lot of field trials are currently happening. They got funded by various agencies, and now many of my PhD students are involved in this and doing these tests for diseases, for the soil health, benchmarking it with the other known expensive technologies, and doing tests on multiple crops in order to save water, in order to improve the yield. So a lot of things are happening there, and so that is now another company which my students run. So these are all the prototypes that we have been working on, and many of them have been commercialized by Nanosniff. So Nanosniff has this entire platform for explosive detection. They have their major product is explosive detectors. The cardiac thing is taking time, but the explosive detector is now available in the market. Our entire cantilever platform is also sold commercially now by the Nanosniff. So it's a good company. It's no longer a startup, now it's a full-fledged industry. And so these are some of their products. And then the Soil Sense is also doing very well. Soil Sense now has all these products in the market. So I think therefore if you look at innovation, the top-down product-oriented approach is the key. You need to first identify a problem and then work together to develop a solution, that takes time. It won't happen 1 year, 2 years kind of a thing. It can take anywhere from 5 to 10 years depending on how good you are in generating resources and all that. So I think on the platforms you can write lots of papers. You can be an academic in a university, but you can still do this kind of research, write good papers, file patents, but finally integrate all that knowledge into developing products. That is how you will see Indian products being used by Indians. We will not have to import products as long as we are able to integrate all the knowledge that we are generating into the product ourselves. And we need to protect IP as early as possible. I think unless you file patents, there are no companies later. Particularly in this deep technology kind of innovation, you have to protect your IP as early as possible. And then you can, of course, there is enough funding available and all that, but it's good to develop these products in academic environment rather than starting a company and then doing all of that as a company, because generating funds in the company is often more difficult than generating funds in academic institutions. So in the academic institutions, you develop the products, develop the prototypes. Once you start a company, within 6 months you should be able to sell the product. So I think make use of this the ecosystem available in academia to actually do that kind of research. There are multiple government of sources for funding. This government has been pretty good, on this startup kind of a point. There are enough resources available now to generate funds. And students, professors alone, cannot build a company. So their team is important. You need, people sometimes with the management background also. And I think involving students is very important. I mean, this is a strong motivation for them. All my companies are run by my students, and they are doing a good job. And I think there are enough areas where one can actually do this. Look for areas where there is a great domestic market demand. It could be agriculture, it could be security, it could be healthcare, it could be anything that you see as a problem in the society. So those, like I said, the societal problems need to become our. My point always has been that unless students see their faculty members doing that, they will not do it themselves. Whether good or bad, they learn a lot from their teachers. So therefore, we need to first lead the way. So I think under this FIRE scheme, what we basically do is, if a faculty member says, I want to start a company, at IIT Delhi we give them 50 lakh rupees as a grant, and we give them 1 year of paid leave, sabbatical we allow them to take for starting a company, and they can even extend it by 2 more years. Total 3 years of leave they can take. They can get 50 lakh rupees from IIT, and then they can use all the resources available in the institute, and that's one very important thing. So I think you need schemes like that to encourage faculty to start companies. Once faculty members start companies, students will become part of it, and once some students start doing it, more students will join, and that is how that ecosystem will grow. And which is what is happening in IIT now. In IIT, in some departments, every 5th faculty member has a startup of his or her own, and many of these startups are doing very well now. And I think that is the future. So that faculty-led innovation needs to happen now. And to me, the deep tech innovation can only thrive in higher educational institutions, because a lot of technology, lot of both for research and otherwise are required, and that can only be available, that is usually available in academic institutions. So I say that the Lakshmi and Saraswati need to come together. So in this country we have always seen them as separate. So I think that needs to change. Whereas in the US, if you see, if you say a smart professor is also a rich professor. The smartness is always associated with wealth there. In India, you can be smart and you cannot be poor. So I think these are the changing things that are happening now. But I think time has come for us to see that Lakshmi and Saraswati together, and there is nothing wrong in that. And I want to see billionaire professors out of our system. Hopefully, it will happen. But also another thing I also would like to say is unlike minds. I keep telling my students always that if you do the same thing every day, right, meet the same people every day, nothing is going to happen. You need to do that. Unless you do that, your mind will never open up, and you will not gain those new insights and new ideas and that sort of thing. Otherwise, you get up in the morning, the same people, the same chai, same place, same I think that's not going to change.
So I think that unlike minds coming together is very, very important. When I say unlike in terms of cultural backgrounds, people who come from completely different cultural backgrounds, interact with them, right? And then unlike in terms of disciplinary training, if you are a mechanical engineer, talk to biologists. Just talk to, if you are a mechanical faculty member, talk to biology faculty member. I can tell you will find lots of interesting ideas. And unlike in terms of attitudes, people who come with completely different attitudes. Here the industries, for example, they ask very different questions when you present the same thing to them because they have a different attitude to doing things. So these unlike minds, whether it's in terms of cultures, disciplines, or attitudes, unless we bring them together on our campuses, I think this innovation will not happen. So very homogeneous kind of places, not much will happen. So you have to mingle with people who are totally different and different.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Sushma from 6th semester. So the talk was really awakening. There are a lot of things we have to think about right now. But then I had a question. Like, there are a lot of research happening day to day in IITs and maybe many other institutes. But why isn't it produced in large scale, like in industries? I mean, you talked about the sniffing tool, you talked about the cardiac and many other things. But then why isn't it produced in large scale?
That's a good point. I think many of these, whatever I have talked about, is all what has happened in the last years, right? In this country, the biggest challenge is academia industry collaboration. They are totally missing. So the industry thinks academia is all writing equations and doing nothing, which is of use for them. Academia thinks these guys are not good enough for me to get it. So there is that kind of a distrust or mistrust or whatever you call it. All of that exists between academia and industry. So we have created huge barriers now, so that's going to be difficult. But whereas in US, for example, it's very different. If you go to US, I worked in US for some time, but most of the problems I used to work basically came from industry. So industry guy would come and say, I am doing this processing, this device is behaving in a very different, in a very weird way. Can you, look at what is happening and can you tell me what is happening, with this device, how I can overcome that? And then that device would have been, something which the world has access to, and they are developing in technology. They are facing all those problems. They have come to me to ask for a solution, and then you work on it. Then of course it will become interesting research. Eventually industry will benefit, and they will fund you more, so they are benefiting from that. And students all work with industry and academia. They eventually go and find a job there. So that ecosystem exists in the US. Here, how many times an industry person came and told you their problems? So they think we cannot even solve their problems. And many a times they don't even have a problem because they are getting everything from somewhere, put it together and selling it. So that is a problem that we have in the country. But things will change. For example, my two companies, Nano-Scale Solutions, I think they need to scale up. Now for them to scale up, now the Nano-Scale, for example, is already talking of some airports buying their products. Now if all Indian airports buy this technology, right, and if they are able to export them, because this is a disruptive technology. Nobody else has this technology anywhere in the world. We hold the US and European patents, and it's unique. It's 1/5 the cost of what is commercially available and maintenance free, and all of that, it has advantage. Now if this technology comes all pervasive all over the world, if one sees that, but that is marketing, right? So technology is one thing, the marketing is a complete different thing. But that is where you need a team, right? Academicians, like I made the statement, professors and students, we can develop those products, but we are not good at marketing. So you need somebody from those management schools who has done that marketing, to come and join your team, and who will help you to, actually spread the whole technology and all of that. So now building those teams and then expand markets, that takes time. So the process has begun. I am not the only one who has started companies being a professor. Even Naukant Bhatt, your own alumnus, is a company which is doing very well. And that company now they do almost something 15 bio-related things, the diagnostic kits, and now they have places, and that's also another company which is expanding. Now when I see in India, all top researchers in the country have their own startups. which was not the case 10 years ago. We never even, dreamt of starting a company and all of that, because we thought writing papers is good enough, to get all awards and everything. But now that the culture is building up in our top educational institutes, you will see the change in the next, I would think, 5 to 10 years. So that is when you see Indian companies becoming visible, and in IT it has happened, right? I mean, we are world players in IT. In e-commerce, starting a company and making it a unicorn, we know how to do that. After all, 100 unicorns have come out in this same country alone, right? So therefore, in e-commerce, that ecosystem has developed, and people know how to build those big companies. But in deep tech innovation, the product-oriented companies, we are beginning now. And now that we have done, like what Infosys began, 30 years ago or 40 years ago, now we have made a beginning. Another, in that time frame, you will also see Indian companies, as big as the companies that you see elsewhere. So that it's a process, and it has started now. We will have to give it time to grow.
Any other questions?
There are many more startups are building in India. As I know, more than 60k startups are there in India. But the startups are not going and scaling in our country. What are the challenges come when we start a startup, and how we can overcome that?
I think the e-commerce startups have scaled very well, right? If you see Flipkart, Snapdeal, any of those, Zomato, any of those companies you see, we all use them on a daily basis, right? So those companies have scaled. The companies which have scaled today are all e-commerce based, right? Or aggregate kind of a model. These are aggregators, sort of business model innovation. So anything which is a business model innovation, right? They have scaled, and they are all, now they are decacorns, not only unicorns and all of that. But the only ones which haven't scaled, which you don't see still as visible as they should be, are these product-oriented companies. But what I was telling her is what is the reason? That this is the beginning of the journey. Whereas e-commerce, the Infosys, the IT journey, right? Now this product journey is only 5 years, 7 years, 10 years kind of journey. Therefore, what happened there in the e-commerce space or IT space will also happen in space in another decade or so. So that will happen. It's a matter of time. Your innovation, I think you are the people who will benefit from that. From all these product-oriented companies out of India, which are all, unicorns and all of that, will happen during your time. So, in my time, I did not even expect that there will be, such a huge explosion of unicorns in this country. 100 unicorns in such a short span of time is tremendous, kind of thing. We are third in the world when it comes to unicorns. We are only next after US, China, India for unicorns. So that way we are doing very well.
Good afternoon, sir. Just one question relating to the explanation just you put forth. How much percentage of the issue do you think is dependent on electronic manufacturing industry? Because we are far behind China compared to our electronics manufacturing facilities. So hardware, especially if it is related to embedded, definitely we need a very competitive electronic manufacturing ecosystem, which we do not have currently, or yet not competitive with China. How much percentage of the issue with this manufacturing products is with this electronics?
No, for both my companies, these are all, actual technologies. You have to make a device out of new materials and fabricate things, which are like, 6 mass, 7 mass kind of processes. We struggled quite a lot, and we probably lost at least 4 years in just putting together that system for manufacturing. And but now we are able to fabricate whatever we need in academic places. There are 7 institutions in the country where you can do excellent, micro nano fabrication. These are all like 200 crore, 100 crore facilities where you can go and fabricate a device which has enough complexity. My devices are all fabricated in these places. IISc has one, the sense. IIT Bombay has, IIT Delhi has, IIT Kanpur has, IIT Kharagpur has. So then IIT Bombay. So these are the places where you can actually go and get this device. And whether it is industry or startup doesn't matter. The facilities are available. So my both companies use the facilities right now. And once they become big enough, right, hundreds of crores and all that, they will establish their own facility. In fact, Nanospace is already trying to establish their own facility. But that's a gradual, it's a process. So right now, in academia, we have excellent facilities. And SCL, the Semiconductor Complex Limited in Chandigarh, now that has come under MIT, it's no longer under ISRO. That facility is also available for nano manufacturing. So now, and that's a very good facility, it's a 3,000 crore facility. So for semiconductors, electronics, it's available now. I mean, it was not the case 5 years ago, but now, thanks to all the investments that have gone into academia and even SCL, now even in Bangalore, there is SITA, which is again another facility. So there are facilities available, one can find a way out. But when semiconductor manufacturing happens, I'm sure it will be a complete different scale, and hopefully that will also.
So I'm Professor Murthy, very thankful for the information already given. So when you say that when you own a company, how would that model work with the university? Because many times me and Dr. went to the university and approached for this, but they were not very clear about the reception along with the professor, more with the professor and the students. That revenue model of somewhere
we can help you. IIT Delhi has helped many institutions for that. You just need to write to me. For example, this is where we have at IIT Delhi. We have all of the support programs for entrepreneurs. The immersion ideation. How do you get an idea? Like arranging those visits for students and faculty to completely different places where they can interact with the different stakeholders and find projects. To product development, pilot scale, market entry, training and mentoring, innovation awards. So we support in multiple ways. So I think you need to create an incubator. If you don't have an incubator, it's high time create an incubator. And whatever groundwork that you have to do for that, I will be very happy to give, because we from IIT Delhi side, though I am not the director, but I still have some say there. I can get you all that help. They should start an incubator. So that, and you also need a good conflict of interest. At IIT Delhi, we also put it together. It's a company, right? How much of your own lab facility can you use? How much of your student time can you use for the company? You need very laid rules. If you don't do that, once one or people start misusing that, then the whole, then our administrators usually, get and make rules to prevent that. But in the process, everybody else does it. So we need proper conflict of interest rules. At IIT Delhi, we have them. We have formed it, and then we have got it out by our side. So I will be happy here with you. Do that. If you haven't started incubator, you can't get incubator.
Incubator we have, sir. It's clear the well-laid rules.
I will share it with you.
Clear rules.
No, you should encourage continue.
Yeah.
Incubator starts with students will do, but if I tell a student to develop an electronic nose platform, where will that girl, boy go to develop that? It's the faculty who to lead the way and guide the students. That kind of. So I think the faculty need to be for starting that, and then the students are part of it and they know that. I think we will be happy to.
One last question.